Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening to all of my class. Today we're gonna discuss about chapter 2, which is the topic will be the diplomacy and the practice. Okay, so basically, on last week we already discussed about the introductions and some of the definitions in the diplomacy. So basically, on this week, we're going to touch a bit in terms of the diplomacy, focusing on the actions, features, norm, practice, and then we're going to look on some instrument, mechanism, and also strategies. Okay, so basically, when we talk about diplomacy, as I said last week, we cannot actually run from uh, the 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 norms of the persuasions, the communications, as well as the arts of negotiation. Okay, so it is actually some sort of uh, the strategy that being used in every state to fulfill their national interests. Okay, so while we can see that the diplomacy, it is a policy method, so applied by all of the country in foreign policy. So foreign policy is a love letter to the state itself. It is an expression, and also it is a decision by the state to we can see the level of uh, friendship, the level of negotiations, the level of the connection between bilateral or multilateral. It depends on the state itself. So basically, uh, it's not just an foreign policy, but it is some sort of to determinations of the the relation process between state to state or between state to multilateralism. Okay, so most of researchers, they see that diplomacy is a field of expertise, and the main purpose of diplomacy is to preserve peace and also preventing conflict. So post Cold War, uh, the international securities are far different from the during the Cold War or during the World War. You know, so realisms play a bigger role in international system. Although in post Cold War we don't see that war still war we don't have big war, but yet we have war, we have conflicts occurs in other part of areas. For example, in nowadays we have conflict in Ukraine, conflict in South Asia between Korea and South Korea, even in 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 Middle East. You know, we still have conflict, but yet we don't have a biggest, for example, war or conflict that affect more than three nations, right? So the idea of diplomacy become more relevant in modern international relation because it is one some sort of tools to prevent war happen. You know, if let's say we have conflict with our neighbor, so we always use our diplomats or our sorts of diplomacy to reduce the tensions or to end the conflicts. Okay, so we know that diplomacy theory is an effective method of communication and solutions in international relations without without any in terms of discriminations of language and also ethnic in the world order. Okay, so diplomacy theory can be expressed in two meanings. Okay, the first will be the diplomacy in the narrow sense. Second will be the diplomacy in the broad sense. What is the diplomacy in the narrow sense? Okay, diplomacy in narrow sense is the definitions of diplomacy is usual form through active diplomatic consultations, an agreement conducted by a country, foreign ministries, and through embassies. You know, when we have, it's like a formal negotiation. You know, okay, and then second, the broad sense means the theory of diplomacy used in international relations. For example, of diplomacy in a broad sense is carried out by international organizations. For example, the non-state actor. We have United Nations, WHO, EU's, and etc. Any others international organization. Okay, the first will be carried by states, and then second will be carried by the non-state actor. Okay, so diplomacy is an engine room in international relations, and it is an application of intelligence and tech to the conduct of official relations. This is by Sir Istau. Satao, okay? So it is also the conduct of relation between sovereign state through the medium of accreditation representative. So vice versa, okay? Diplomacy is a negotiation and negotiation is a diplomacy. Now we're going to look at some of the features in diplomacy. So we a lot of features, and it depends on various factor. Okay, so the various features would further include a lot of factor to be included. For example, like nature, objective, the means, and then the types of diplomacy. And then some scholar will say is that every occasion that engaging state to state can define as a diplomacy. That's why if let's say one occasion, maybe some nation feels that they wanted to give something in return, the state will benefit a lot in terms of relationship. It can be sought out as an diplomacy types. Okay, for example in Malaysia, right, we have one unique diplomacy with China, which is the ceremony of panda diplomacy, right? Uh, and then we have Thai diplomacies, and then we have in one occasion in international organization. I'm not sure which kind of occasion, you know. The Vladimir Putin give his quote to others representative to express how good relationship that they are. Okay, so in any act that can bring benefit to the nation, for example, promoting peace and also stability, and also to make more the relationship will be most strengthened. It can be sort of diplomacy. Okay, diplomacy is not an immortal, but it is a missionary for action act through settled procedures in any occasion, will means the bilateral or with the multilateral format, and it could be both. Okay, so it is also a deal with every sort of matter, and in its absence of breakdowns to lead a crisis. So it works during conflict and cooperation. It depends, and also it can work both. You know, for example, in during conflict, we use diplomacy to settle dispute, and during a cooperation or any other sorts of dealing, we use diplomacy to get benefit from the cooperation, to get benefit from the deals. So it is a start of establishing nation interest also, and it's always back with national power at its core. Okay, so diplomacy always protect national interest. We always look whether the negotiation, the uh, cooperation first will benefit us, then only we enter in the negotiation cooperation. If let's say it will not benefit to us, so we will try to avoid or try to escape. Okay, this is a device of uh, diplomacy. So the main device will be six main. So the first will be the persuasion. So persuasions is an art, it's the art of negotiation. So it is one of the device that we use prominently during the negotiation process, and one of the highly um, sort of diplomacies. Okay, so sometimes the art of persuasion to reduce the tension or to get something that can benefit to the state. Okay, so most of the state or country will use persuasion if they feels that they want something from others, or maybe the sorts of conflict resolution. Okay, for example, if they are engaging in conflict. Okay, rewards were one rewards will also use as a good things in terms of diplomacy. So if we give some rewards to other nation, so it also will benefit to us. Okay, the promise of rewards. It is a decision made. It is a concrete decision and also concrete promise made by the state. For example, uh, in terms of benefit through in terms of security or benefit in terms of the economic itself. Okay, so promise of reward, you give a promise to the state, and the state will get some sorts of backup from you. For example, in any occasion lah, or it can be in terms of security, or it can be in terms of cooperation. Okay, so threatening force, it is a harsh types of diplomacy, but most of the superpower or dominant state uh, will always use this kind of diplomacy or this kinds of approach to creating fear, fear factor throughout the other state that try to make chaos or what, right? Okay, non-violence punishment, for example, embargo sanction, will also a harsh uh, types of diplomacy, and to other state, for example, to reduce tension, to avoid any crisis become prolonged crisis, or to settle any dispute. Okay, and the last will be the use of pressure. So we try to put pressure to the state until they uh, fail, or they uh, reduce their tensions or reduce their uh, chaos in the international system. These three last, for example, threatening forces, non-violent punishment, and also use of force, frequently being used for avoid dispute or war happen, conflict happen, or to maintaining security in international system. Okay. Okay, this is the primary objective of diplomacy. Okay, so the primary objective of diplomacy is to execute the national policy and accomplish its essential interest through attack. Okay, for example, we have five primary objective. The first will be to represent, second will be the communication, third will be the channels of informations, fourth will be the diplomatic negotiation, and last will be the diplomatic privilege. Okay, so first is representation. So it is through diplomatic representation. So state promote their political and economic interests. So they negotiate, coordinate, and solve problem. They also gather information that is not otherwise publicly available. So they will also convey message to foreign representative in terms of protections and etc. Okay, so it is a diplomatic representation. Okay, second will be the communication. So communication is a tool in terms of diplomacy. So it is the established method of influencing the decisions and behavior of foreign governments and policy through dialogue, negotiation, or any other measures, sort of war or violence. Okay. Third will be the channel of information. So this is diplomacy is a official channel, okay, between state. So it's a way of communication between countries to other through their diplomat. So diplomat is a representative of the diplomacy. Okay, the fourth will be the diplomatic negotiation. So it is an exchange of concession and compensation in a framework of international order accepted by sovereign entities. So it is limited to negotiation between state. Okay, so this is sort of the negotiation. And then the objective of diplomacy, this is on the last thing. So we have two lah, diplomatic privilege or immunity. So privilege ni is an exemption enjoyable received by the diplomats. If you are a diplomat, you will get benefits of the privilege of diplomatics. For example, families, member of the mission, staff, right? Many ordinary in terms of criminals, civil wars, or other host country, as determined under terms established by the Treaty of International Law. Okay. And then last is immunity. So also something privilege you can get if you are a diplomat. So this is the privilege. It's a principle of international law which can certain foreign government official are not subject to the jurisdictions of the local court and other authorities for both their official and the large extent their personal activity. So you have privilege lah, some sort of privilege if you become diplomats. Okay, now we're gonna see the tools of diplomacy. So here we have six main. Okay, the tool of diplomacy first would be the diplomacy itself lah. So it's a meeting of foreign leaders to react diplomatic solutions to problem. So in terms of economic aid, you can sending money to help. So it is a tool of diplomacy also. Okay, and then humanitarian aid, sending food, medical, you help others in terms of troops. So it is also some sorts of diplomacy. Military aid also can be considered as a tool of diplomacy. You're sending military troops, for example, we are very prominent in terms of peacekeeping operation. So we start our peacekeeping operation from 1968, and then from 90s we expand our military operation. In terms of peacekeeping operation, we actually create what we call as MALBAT, Malaysian Battalion. We help a lot of conflict nation, for example, Bosnia, Congo, the Republic of Congo, Sudan. We also experience the event of Black Hawk Down in Mogadishu. This is the experience lah. And we are one of the prominent nation that will get benefit from the peacekeeping operation. So that is our achievement in terms of peacekeeping operation. It's very good for us, and we also get a lot of in return. For example, we can actually expand our troops in terms of experience, but of conduct. We also get a lot of uh, military exercise that will help our troops to become more better. Okay, And then treaties, so agreeing with foreign countries to solve a problem, and also, for example, sanctions, embargo, putting restriction on the country, also sort of diplomacy. And then the last will be the military intervention. This one will be you sending troops to solve problem. Okay, so what some sort of the diplomacy, tool of diplomacy. Okay, so now we're gonna see the functions of diplomacy. So the functions of diplomacy uh, is what actually diplomacy uh, do. What actually diplomacy engage uh, in terms of function. Okay, the first will be the representation. Okay, so as I said just now, the presentation, you represent the country, right? So in terms of negotiation, you also obtaining information, you get information through, for example, sorry, to help strengthen back the national security or any information that will benefit to the nation. You also promote and also protecting the interest of nation. Okay, the interest, national interest. So it is also some sort of cooperation, and the last would be the policy making. Okay, so there are four prominent functions in diplomacy. The first, representing state, the interest. For example, diplomat is a spokesperson. It is also a channel of communication within state to the state. Okay, and we also uh, uh, as we said, repeatedly, and it is also a symbolic of representation. For example, ambassador represent the head of state in the host state, and ambassador also the professionally of his country or her country. Okay, so it is also reporting information. So you report, you're obtaining so the information about the host state, and then the role of attaché. For example, we have defense attaché, we have education attaché, we have health attaché. Trade attaché. So this attaché being collect information and send back to host state. So any others dispute or any other cooperation, so this report can 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 j- can also become a main reference to the host state to make action or to make any foreign policy to up the state itself. Okay, so it's like a decision lah. So we if first we before we make decision, we have to get some sort of information for us to make a wise decision. Okay, the last will be the policy making. So become policy makers. So usually in multilateral conference where decisions are to be reached at the end of the conference. And last will be the counselor service. So this is also the function of diplomacy. So promoting the protecting of interests of nation, the roles of consuls, and promotions of trade, help troubled nations, settle passport visas. Last will be the weddings, births, and etc. for the nation citizens. Okay, so this is include from Palmer and Perkins. So the diplomats has five functions. Okay, this is from Palmer and Perkins. So he said the first will be the protect of national interest abroad. So you as a representative of your state, you are protecting your national interest in any occasion that can hurt or tarnish your national interest. And you also become the representations of the state in any occasion, formal occasions, go for negotiation, reduce tension, create opportunities. Uh, you also do some reportings to the host state for give a lot of information for in terms of decision making, and then the main role is to maintenance the international peace and also promote peace and cooperation in international system. Okay, so last we're gonna look at the diplomatic instrumental. So if the negotiations succeed, the result is embodied in a formal diplomatic instrument, of which there are several types. For example, in the numbers of international instrumental has increased dramatically since World War II. So we have a lot of instruments of diplomatic. Okay, for example, we have treaties, we have conversations, we have protocols. Later on, I will show you lah. So the instrument of diplomatic. So between 1945 and 1946, this is during Cold War, there are about 22,500 multilateral treaties. It is more than previous 350 years, you know. So post Cold War, post World War, so we can see the interactions of the state, the negotiation of the state become more increasing and increasing. You know, when World War II happened, we are dealing in proxy war. When we're dealing in proxy war, the first point will be the allied. The allies are very important because we need allied, then only we can entering the proxy war. If we don't have allied, which is our proxy, so we cannot can be defeated early. So that's why uh, during Cold War, multilateral treaties are very become more prominent. So that's why you can see that during 1945 and 46, which is 20 years, you can see more about 2,500 multilateral treaties. It is more than the previous 350 years. Okay, this is the main four instrument. The first will be treaty, second conventions, third agreement, and the last will be the protocol. So first is a treaty. So the most solemn type of instrument is a treaty. So written binding contract between countries. So treaty are registered at the UN and maybe bilateral involving two countries, or more than two countries will be multilateral. So international organization also forge treaty both with individual countries and with each others. So first would be the treaty lah. It's a symbolic of a multilateral or bilateral connections between the state. Second will be the convention. So a convention is a multilateral instrument that creates international law or regulates the behavior of countries. So the United Nations and its agency negotiate many conventions, as does the Council of Europe. Okay, so this is for negotiation. No, this is for convention because we also involved in convention. For example, Geneva, in terms of the protecting the environmental. You know, we have a lot of convention that we involve. So Malaysia involved. That will be agreements. It is usually bilateral, not multilateral, less formal and permanent than treaties. So the deal with narrow term techniques, topics. So they are negotiated between governments or government departments. Through sometimes non-governmental essential are involved. In the United States, president use executive agreement to pursue secrecy and to avoid the ratifications of process. Okay. So agreement ni is very important lah, sangat penting. So if in agreement, it has bounded with law. Kalau ada agreement, is bounded with law lah. And that's what we protocol. So it is Act 10, replace and release instrument. So it may contain details concerning the application of an agreement and optional extensions of conventions, or a technical addition to a general agreement. So protocol is like a pre-agreement lah, kan, simple. Okay, so this week I actually wanted to do two topic. So I managed to settle one topic. So during this week, I'll give you another topic, which is the chapter 3, the history of the diplomacy. So try to engaging through videos for this week, and then for next week we're gonna go for live back. So try to settle your draft next week. I already told you, right, last week, that on next week, uh which is on 14 uh November. So we're gonna you may present the draft of your assessment. You have groups draft, individual assessment, and also the group project. Okay, so we're gonna present the draft. So we're gonna look at it. So we're gonna discuss about that, and then we're gonna start with the chapter 4. Okay, so chapter 2. This is the chapter 2. I'll finish it chapter 2, and then during this week I will give you another video, which is chapter 3, about the history, and then next week we're gonna start with chapter 4, the multi-track, and then we're gonna go for the discussions of assessment. Okay, and then we're gonna stop that, and then next week 5 we're gonna try to settle another 2 topic. Then once settle everything, so we will start our assessment. We'll start with the seminar, and then the presentation and everything lah. Okay, so guys, I'm gonna stop this class today, and then during this week I will send another video for you, which is chapter 3. So try to make it as easy as it can, and also as maximum as you can. Okay, so thank you class for today for your hearing, and we shall meet next week. And for those, please be prepared for next week. We're gonna have discussion lah on our assessment. So itu saja daripada saya. Sekian, terima kasih, sampai jumpa lagi lah. So we're gonna meet on next week. Okay, so thank you class. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.